Welcome to the fourth meeting of the California Commission on the State of Hate. This is our call to order. Closed captioning is available for this meeting. The closed captions can be displayed in English or another language, which will allow you to view an automated live transcript of the meeting in another language. Alec will show that slide. To display closed captions on your screen, please do the following. Click the button labeled Show Captions at the bottom of your Zoom window. Select the box at the bottom of the window labeled Enable Translation. When you see You've enabled translation at the top, select English as the speaking language and select your preferred language in the second menu. Then click Save. Automated captions in your selected language should start appearing at the bottom of the Zoom window. We will send instructions in Spanish in the chat, and Monica will do that now. I'm pleased to welcome everyone. I'm Brian Levin, chair of this wonderful commission. He, him. And I'm going to now ask our Deputy Director, Alec, to please do the roll call to establish a quorum.
Absolutely. Chair Levin, Vice Chair
Present.
Adamski.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Che.
Present.
Commissioner Cuellar.
Present.
Commissioner Filer. Commissioner Roybal.
Present.
Commissioner Salcedo.
Present.
Commissioner Suthers.
Present.
We have a quorum. Chair Levin, you're on mute.
Thank you. Now we'll just go over our agenda. We did our welcome. Next, we'll have an information presentation by a wonderful speaker who I will tell you about in a minute, Dr. Lynn Langdon. Then we'll have approval of the minutes. There will be no Civil Rights Department report today. Then we will have our chair and vice chair statements along with the subcommittees. After that, we'll have our civil rights, civil liberties discussion. Then we'll have commission member announcements. Then future agenda items. Then we'll have the public comment on items not on the agenda. And lastly, adjournment. Thank you. I'd like to move on to reviewing the process for public comment. If you are joining us on Zoom and would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand feature to join the public comment queue. If you are joining us by phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute. You may also submit a written public comment by email at csh@calcivilrights.ca.gov. Let me just repeat that. csh@calcivilrights.ca.gov. If you submit a written comment that pertains to an agenda item, we'll read it aloud or we'll summarize it when the public comment portion of that agenda item is open and before any vote. If the comment is not about a specific agenda item, we will read it aloud or summarize it during the latter agenda item titled Public Comment on Items Not on the Agenda. And Monica is going to insert that address into the chat. For anyone joining us in the room in Los Angeles, please raise your hand for a verbal comment and we will unmute the room. You may also submit in other ways. In the interest of time, we will limit verbal comment to 2 minutes per person. Is there any commission discussion?
No commission discussion.
Thank you, Monica. Monica, do we have public comment on Zoom?
No public comment on Zoom.
Kevin, do we have any emailed public comment?
No email public comment.
Thank you. Shanna, do we have any public comment in the room there?
No public comments.
Thank you so much. It is with great pleasure that I'm going to go now to agenda item 2, our informational presentation, which is a research overview, the importance of measuring hate crime victimization and responses. Dr. Lynn Langton, Program Director for the Victimization and Response Program at RTI International, will be making this presentation. We are very fortunate to have this wonderful speaker today. I do want to note that the information presented today does not necessarily reflect the views of the Commission or the California Civil Rights Department. And now I'd like to introduce our very special guest. Lynn Langton, PhD, is Program Director for the Victimization and Response Program at RTI International, and currently co-leads a DOJ-funded coordinated hate crime resource center, but we'll hear a little bit more about that perhaps. She has extensive research experience in the areas of victimization, victim services, sexual violence, financial fraud, white-collar crime, police-community relations, and survey methodology. But many people know her as one of the lead presenters and researchers relating to important hate crime victimization studies. In her prior role as chief of the Victimization Statistics Unit at the Bureau of Justice Statistics, Dr. Langton formulated, directed, and oversaw numerous large-scale national projects, including the vaunted National Crime Victimization Survey and the National Census of Victim Service Providers. And not to the chagrin of my favorite bulldog, Dr. Watts, she holds a PhD in criminology, law, and society from the University of Florida. Our dear friend, Dr. Watts, is a bulldog, having graduated from University of Georgia, but we're not going to discuss any more on that. So without further ado, I introduce our wonderful speaker who has done so much to expand our knowledge of hate crime. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Lynn Langton. Thank you.
Good morning to you all, and thank you for that introduction, and go Gators. So my presentation this morning is titled The Importance of Measuring Hate Crime Victimization and Responses. But I know this committee understands and appreciates that we can't just rely on official law enforcement statistics for patterns and trends in hate crime. I know that you've heard in earlier sessions about why victims may be reticent to report to police. You know about the issues with law enforcement accurately identifying when a crime has been motivated by hate. And you've even seen, data from the California Health Interview Survey that shows the much, much higher percentages of the population experiencing hate crime than what the data from the FBI show. So I really just want to use this time today to reinforce those notions and to tell you a little bit about what's been learned from measuring people's experiences with hate crime from the Bureau of Justice Statistics National Crime Victimization Survey. And as Chair Levin noted, I used to work at BJS. I directed the NCVS, so I know it well, but I do want to be clear that I don't speak on behalf of the BJS today. Okay, we can move to the next slide, please. So one of the first things I want to tell you is that even though BJS has not published any hate crime data in several years, hate crime reports in several years, data from the NCVS are still available, publicly available through 2023. And Monica, if you could put the link in the chat, all of the data are available through the Inter-University Consortium for Social and Political Research, which is kind of a mouthful, but they are available there for the public to download and use. 2023, and I've shown this chart here that shows those data through 2023 on hate crime victimization. 2023 is the most recent year because NCVS estimates are typically released 8 to 10 months after the end of the year. So the 2024 estimates should be available this fall in, say, September or October. And that lag is partly due to the complexity of the survey and the work that the Census Bureau has to do to process the data. And then it's also due in part to just the time that it takes the BJS statisticians to analyze the data, to verify the results, and to publish the report. So again, I wanted to show you what the NCVS trend line looks like based on the most recently available data. But one thing I want to caution here is that even though it looks like there's some bouncing around, the apparent differences from one year to the next are not actually statistically significant, meaning that they're all within a margin of error. So we can't really say that there's been any increases or decreases over time. And that's one of the challenges with survey data, especially when you're trying to measure a relatively rare event like crime. The estimates are going to be based on really small sample sizes, and it's challenging to detect things like change over time, even when there's 250,000 interviews a year like there are with the NCVS. So that's one point, but the more important point with this chart is how much higher these numbers are than what we see in the FBI's UCR. I couldn't even add the UCR numbers to this chart without having two different axes. Because the number of hate crimes in the UCR based on official law enforcement statistics in 2023 was around 12,000, compared to, you see here, 256,000 in the NCVS. Next slide, please. Since the NCVS is a self-report survey, hate crime is measured differently than it is in the UCR, though. So for starters, it's important to note that the NCVS is measuring hate crime, not hate incidents. And so there had to be a crime in order for it to be counted in the NCVS. And this blue box in the top right corner shows those NCVS crime categories. So the way that hate crime is measured is that victims who experience one of these crime types are asked a series of questions to get at whether they thought that the crime was motivated by hate against them because they were part of a protected category. And so I've listed out those protected categories. This is based on the Federal Hate Crime Statistics Act definition of a hate crime. But then the NCVS does also capture if someone believes they were targeted because they were associated with or perceived to be part of one of these groups, even if they weren't. I mentioned the issue of smaller sample sizes earlier, and that's largely why the NCVS doesn't ask more detail about, say, the different types of religious bias. It's just these high-level categories, because the sample sizes would just be too small to generate if you went into any further detail. And then in addition to asking about the types of bias motivating the crime, the NCVS also requires that the victim had some kind of corroborating evidence to demonstrate that it was a hate crime. So the NCVS asks if the offender used derogatory language, if they left hate signs or symbols at the scene of the crime, or if the incident was confirmed to be a hate crime by police. The first one is by far the most common, as you can imagine. I think about 99% of victims say that the evidence was that the offender used derogatory language. And then, of course, the very important aspect of the NCVS measurement of hate crime that distinguishes it from the police data is that it includes crimes that were not reported to the police. So that's just a quick overview on how it's measured. Next slide, please. And here I want to show you quickly the trends in hate crime reported and not reported to the police. And again, this demonstrates why it's so important to collect these data. In 2023, you can see that more than 50% of hate crimes were not reported to the police. That's that light blue line there. Okay, and in the interest of time, I want to go ahead and just jump to the next slide. Here's another reason why it's important to measure self-report hate crime. The type of bias motivating the crime looks different in the NCVS versus the FBI law enforcement data. So the NCVS is the dark blue in this chart, and you can see higher percentages of hate crime based on race and ethnicity, gender, and disability in the NCVS compared to the UCR. And one thing I think is important to understand in just interpreting this chart is that the NCVS also captures a lot more multiple bias incidents than what we see in the UCR. So, for example, victims who say that the crime was motivated by bias against their race and against their gender. And there's a lot of possible reasons why the NCVS may pick up more of these multiple bias incidents or crimes. But that's one of the reasons that back in 2020, BJS asked RTI, the organization that I work for, to assess the NCVS hate crime questions and whether they could or should be asked differently. So there were some concerns that victims may be answering the hate crime questions affirmatively if they believed that the respondent targeted them because of a perceived vulnerability or because of the offender expressing just general aggression towards them. So, for example, if a woman is robbed and the offender says, "Give me your bag," and then uses a derogatory term for a woman, she could answer all of the hate crime questions affirmatively because she believes she was targeted for being a woman carrying a purse, and the offender then used derogatory language. So the concern is that some of those types of scenarios were being captured in the NCVS hate crime data. And then on the flip side, BJS also recognized that the NCVS may be missing some crimes that could be categorized or should be categorized as hate crimes. So again, in 2020, they asked us to do an in-depth assessment of the NCVS measurement of hate. Next slide, please. And I just want to share a little bit about what we found, since it has implications for the California Health Interview Survey, but also for the way that hate crime will be measured in the NCVS moving forward. So we did an in-depth assessment of the hate crime questions. It involved multiple components, multiple approaches that you see listed in this light blue box here, including a pretty big effort to test different versions of the hate crime questions. So the way the current questions work, the victim is first asked a broad screener question about whether they suspected that the incident was a hate crime. And if they say no to that question, they don't get any other questions about the potential bias motivating the crime. If they say yes, they get a question that basically says, "Do you think the offender targeted you because of," and then gives them each of the protected categories that I showed on the earlier slide. And essentially what we found in this review was that this language about "were you targeted because of X" was picking up situations like the example I gave earlier of the woman being robbed. But more importantly, we found that by leading with a screener question that asked the victim to identify the incident as a hate crime, we were missing a lot of incidents that should have been classified as hate crimes but weren't. And so one of our big recommendations to BJS is that they should ask the questions about whether the incident was motivated by different types of bias and why the victim thought that, but not to actually use the term hate crime. So BJS is working on a larger redesign of the NCVS that'll be implemented in 2025, and the new hate crime questions that don't actually use that term will be part of that. So stay tuned for those new data in 2026. And I'll stop there. And actually, if you go to the next slide, there's a link to the report, and I can send that along as well.
Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I'd like to now go to commission discussion. Monica, do any commissioners have their hands raised?
Commissioner Che?
Yes, thank you so much for the presentation. This is of great interest to the work that I do in terms of tracking hate, specifically to the API community. I did want to ask you specifically about your last point, which is, and I'm not sure if you're able to answer this, but do you find that there can actually be a reverse, meaning a reverse situation where someone is a victim of a crime and they racialize the incident because there's perceptions when, in fact, there is no, a lot of times you are able to tell with a combination of something that is verbalized, something that's like a racial epithet. Because that is something that we have been very curious about too, especially in very tense periods. And so just wondered if you were able to address that as well.
Well, and that's really challenging to tease out with a survey like the NCVS, and that was part of what we were trying to understand in this assessment that we undertook. So we would look at things like the narratives that people provided. So they answer the question and then they provide a narrative that gives a bit more description about what actually happened. And so we were trying to adjust the language to really hone in on those situations where the motivation was really bias and not necessarily that there was that general aggression or the use of a slur term that could be interpreted as a hate term. It is very tricky though, and so that was part of the process that we went through and the recommendations that we provided to BJS to really hone in on that language, not just to say, were you targeted because of X, but do you think that the person did this because they had something against people who are like you or people of one of these categories?
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Wow. To just illustrate how excellent this presentation is, I don't know which person came first. So if
Commissioner Salcedo.
that's who I was going to go to. So Commissioner Salcedo, thank you so much. And then we'll go to Commissioner Suthers and Commissioner Damsky, unless there's someone else. Thank you, Commissioner Salcedo.
Thank you so much, Chair Levin, for the opportunity. And also, thank you so much for this great presentation. I do have a couple of questions. So one is about the time that it takes to, for data to be collected and ultimately generate reports. And I know that, it could take some time. So if you can enlighten us a little bit with that, would be great. But my other question is related to the current political climate that we're all experiencing, and if there is any anticipation on the increase of hate crimes in multiple communities. So if you can just give us your thoughts on those two things would be great. Thanks.
Sure, absolutely. So the first one, to speak to the lag, which is a challenging thing because to your point, we want timely data on whether changes in political environment impact changes in hate crime and those sorts of issues. For a large survey like the NCVS, though, the data are collected throughout the course of the year. The interviews are conducted 365 days of the year, basically, and the collection ends on December 31st of that year. So the 2024 collection ended on December 31st of 2024, and at that point, the processing of the data start. And that's where the Census Bureau goes through and does all kinds of checks and validation and makes sure that missing data are coded correctly. And then they provide a file to BJS. BJS analyzes it and they put out that first initial report that is the release of the data. And so that's where you get that 8 to 10 month lag in there. And unfortunately, I know that BJS and the Census Bureau have worked hard over the years to try to reduce that lag as much as possible. But again, it's a survey that goes to 250,000 interviews a year. And it's a fairly complex survey that does include these qualitative narratives as well that are used to then fill in gaps and make sure that the data are valid and reliable. So it's really ensuring that reliability that takes that time. And in terms of increases and decreases in hate crime in the coming months and years, that's something that I can't speculate on. But of course we have seen changes over time where we related to political changes, just changes in the general environment in the country that lead to increases or decreases in hate crimes against certain groups. So we could speculate that we could see some changes, but unfortunately, it's challenging to track with a survey like the NCVS.
Of course, and just really quick, because of the multiple layoffs from the federal government, right? And the, you explained the process of how all of this takes. Have you heard or do you know of any possible further delays in putting this data out from last year?
So the one thing, I have not heard of any delays, and I can't speak to the internal processes because I'm not there anymore, but I do know that this year, the Bureau of Justice Statistics has been undergoing a major redesign of the NCVS. This has been a multi-year process, almost a decade long in the making. And not just the hate crime questions, our assessment was sort of part of that redesign, but they're doing a more wholesale assessment to just modernize the survey and to collect information on other aspects of more detailed information, for example, on victim help seeking. And so in 2024, they did a split sample design where half of the sample got the current survey instrument and half of the sample got the revised survey. And then they'll use that split sample design to be able, when they roll out the new survey in 2025, they'll be able to still maintain trends over time because they can use that split sample to estimate how much difference in crime rates is caused just by a new survey instrument, if that makes sense. So the long story short there is that 2024 could be a little bit more delayed than the 8 to 10 months that we usually see because of that split sample design and the redesign that they're going through right now. But again, that's just me speculating. I can't speak on behalf of BJS about that, unfortunately.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Now we'll go to our dear friend, Commissioner Suthers.
Morning. Thank you, Chair Levin. And Dr. Langdon, thank you for your incredible work, both at RTI and at RAND. I wanted to ask a sort of specific question as it relates to law enforcement collection efforts. In all of your work, who in the law enforcement community is having an effective community outreach as it relates to collecting hate crime data? And if you found an agency that's doing it, I'll say right, what do they attribute that to?
That's a great question. And we've worked with a number of different law enforcement agencies around the country that are using different strategies, like having specific bias crime units, for example. One of the things that I will say is we were about to be kicking off a major hate crime resource center that was going to, I think, shed light on exactly some of the points that you're raising. There are so many diverse and independent efforts across the federal government, or there have been, to do training and technical assistance with law enforcement agencies, to work with various agencies, to understand what agencies are doing. And the Resource Center was really intended to sort of bring all of that information together and put it into one location where we could also sort of begin to glean some of those important lessons learned and best practices more wholesale in one location. Unfortunately, the funding for that resource center was terminated earlier in the month. But I do think that, it raises a really great point that there is still an effort needed to really understand what some of these best practices are. And I don't think we can really fully speak to that. There have been some independent research studies that have started to look at this, but really trying to pull that all together, I think is something important for the field to still do.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And now, Vice Chair Damsky, thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much, Dr. Langton. It caught my attention on one of your slides where you talked about the NCVS definition of hate crime, including the victim having corroborating evidence of hate motivation, and specifically offender using derogatory language. I'd like to hear your thoughts about how this conflicts with or intersects with our First Amendment rights of free speech, and where in investigating and prosecuting hate crimes, free speech can be a hindrance or a help. It's something I'm thinking about very much today, and I'll be mentioning in my comments later. Thank you.
Well, I think you raise a great point. The one thing to note with the NCVS, though, is that the NCVS is only focused on criminal acts. So this isn't just about the offender using hate speech. There was a crime committed and the offender was also using hate speech or derogatory language in the context of committing that crime. So I think that's a really important distinction. It's not necessarily saying that had the offender been using that language alone, that we would have classified it as a crime. It's just that when that language is used in the context of the crime, that's some of what gave that victim the sense that it was hate motivated.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Thank you. I do not see any other commissioner questions, but Monica, can you just alert me if you do, because I would like to ask my question last.
No further commissioner comment.
Fantastic. I have a quick two-part question and then a brief comment. The first is, could you tell us some of the things that were going to be in the Hate Crime Resource Center that you were so diligently working on with various partners?
Well, to be fair, we had not actually gotten off the ground with the Hate Crime Resource Center. So it was funded, it was awarded, but we were never actually funded fully for that work. So unfortunately, we hadn't even been able to get off the ground with doing any of that work, with really focusing on just understanding all of the various efforts across the federal government to improve the response to hate crime, both from law enforcement, from the community, from prosecutors, and to really pull all of that information and all of the resources and materials that have been developed around those topics into one location, as well as to then provide some additional training and technical assistance and identify gaps and fill in those gaps. So that's what the Resource Center was supposed to be doing, but unfortunately, we really hadn't even started that work.
And present company excluded, you got some of the top talent in this area to work with you on this, no?
Absolutely. Yes. We had, I think, an incredibly impressive list of partners, of subject matter experts. Folks like Chair Levin had agreed to be part of this and lend his expertise. It really was quite, I think that's probably why we were awarded the Resource Center in the first place. We had an incredibly distinguished group of experts.
Thank you. Just my quick follow-up with a quick comment, but you all will see why. One of the things that we found, and I was very touched when you said, "Oh, CHIS, that's such a wonderful resource that you actually relied on that in part in doing your work." And what the CHIS study found, which we had just a phenomenal presentation just a couple meetings ago. on that by one of our incredible staff. One of the things that I found so stark was for various communities, including LGBTQIA+, and specifically our transgender brothers and sisters, Native Americans, and the disabled, had a significant variance from what we see with law enforcement reporting, much more so than the mean. Could you describe, in particular, how valuable this is to study victimizations? And please, I don't mean to offend anyone, but I want to particularly talk about transgender Americans. How valuable is it for these smaller and oftentimes quite vulnerable communities to this kind of violence to have this kind of research, and if you can, specifically with regard to the transgender community?
Sure. Well, I mean, I showed the slide that looked at the rates of reporting and not reporting to the police for hate crime. And that's just the overall. So we know that 50%, more than 50% overall of hate crime are not reported to the police. But when we talk about some of the more vulnerable populations, the transgender community, for example, members of the LGBT community, those rates of not reporting to the police are considerably higher. And I don't have those numbers right in front of me. I published a report looking at hate crime against sexual and gender minorities a couple years back that I can share using NCVS data. But those rates of reporting or not reporting are considerably higher. And so if we look just at official law enforcement data, we're missing the amount of hate crime that's happening against those populations. And then for understanding how to respond and understanding things like help-seeking behaviors, of course, having a survey like the NCVS is critical for that. And that's part of where the NCVS is being redesigned. And I think it'll be really important to understand if these crimes aren't being reported to the police, is there anyone that they are being reported to? And then can we learn from that about where some of these vulnerable populations are, who they are going to for help and assistance, and then continuing to improve the responses based on what we learn.
And you get these categories, is it not, from the Hate Crime Statistics Act?
The protected categories are based on the Hate Crime Statistics Act. That's right. That's correct.
Thank you. And now I'm going to make my comment, and now you'll know why I extended this out like they do in legislative hearings. The Department of Justice recently sent out a memo that establishes that they made a decision to remove all questions about gender identity and violence against our transgender brothers and sisters from its most crucial survey, the very National Crime Victimization Survey. I am not going to roll over on this. Just this morning, prior to this meeting, I am coordinating with colleagues in Washington, D.C., as well as here in California, to not as a commissioner or as chair, but in my capacity with regard to the California Association of Human Relations Organizations, to vigorously push back and respond to this. It is an outrage that at the very time we are now getting data that shows the tremendous violence that our residents face who are transgender and also in the gender identity category as well, when we have established that there is astronomical violence. We have to look no further than this commission to see the kind of personally directed horrendous violence that is directed against our fellow residents and citizens. It is a national disgrace. Moreover, this is violative of the Hate Crime Statistics Act, which I'm a bit of an old guy, where my research and friendship with allies across a wide spectrum helped get that act passed. We are not going to take this lying down, but I think this illustrates the importance, Dr. Langdon, of your work, and also how very important this CHIS data is in this context. This is a disgrace and an outrage, and I will not stop. I will travel to DC if I have to make sure that the voices of vulnerable communities, and in particular, our transgender brothers and sisters, are heard. This is a national disgrace. That is my personal opinion, and not that of Dr. Langdon, the Commission, or the Civil Rights Department. Thank you. And thank you, Dr. Langdon. Next, if we may, and thank you for that opportunity, my fellow commissioners, for the ability to show that this category is not only one that's morally required, it's statutorily required, and we're not going to take it sitting down. Thank you. Now, if we can go to public comment. Monica, do we have public comment on Zoom?
No public comment on Zoom.
Kevin, do we have any emailed public comment?
No public comment via email.
And Shanna, do we have any public comment in the room?
No public comment.
All right. We'll now go to the chair, vice chair, and subcommittee updates. Just briefly, as a reminder, as always, if you're a victim of a hate crime or incident, you can contact the California versus Hate resource line to report the incident and be connected with resources. We will send that link in the chat as well. Monica will be doing that. And I just want to put it again. It's www.cavshate, and that's CA versus hate, but all one word, .org/. We also want to remind you about the free services available for communities through the California Civil Rights Department Exceptional Community Conflict Resolution Unit, which is so incredibly important, especially at a time now when we are seeing the federal analog to that being eviscerated. If your community is experiencing heightened fear, conflict, or tensions because of discriminatory practices, hate incidents, or hate crimes, the Community Conflict Resolution Unit may be able to assist. CCRU offers a range of conflict resolution services to help communities effectively address hate and discrimination-based community conflict. All CCRU services are free, voluntary, and confidential. CCRU services can be requested by completing the request for service form online and emailing the form to, all caps, CCRU at, small case, calcivilrights.ca.gov. And we'll put that contact information for CCRU in the chat. And thank you, Monica. Again, CCRU at calcivilrights.ca.gov. Thank you. And if I may now continue, I just want to thank and congratulate our just exceptional staff with respect to a forum that was held yesterday at UCLA for their Institute for the Study of Hate. Just phenomenal. And for those that were there, the thing that struck me the most was the undergraduates who presented. They're our future, and with these fraught times, if there's one thing I find great comfort in, is our young people. Just wanted to also go over just a few things that I think are worth mentioning. On May 17th, we had the anniversary of Brown versus Board of Education, which outlawed segregation in public education. We are coming on to Pride Month. So I want to extend my heartiest congratulations to all my friends and relatives who are part of the rainbow community, I have pride in being your ally and always will be. Additionally, we have Juneteenth coming up as well. And I encourage, if there's something I missed, to please chime in during the comment sections as well. I want to also offer my deepest condolences to my friends at the American Jewish Committee and the families of Yaron Lashinsky and Sarah Milgram, who were murdered last week in Washington, D.C. As I said when I became chair, we have no place for violence in this country, and in particular with regard to someone's ethnicity, religion, or nationality, inter alia. I offer my deepest condolences, and the function was at an American Jewish Committee event, which has done so much with respect to interfaith. The American Jewish Committee actually was a key player in putting together MJAC, the Muslim Jewish consortium. So my deepest condolences. Additionally, I want to also extend my empathy and disgust relating to the defacement of the Islamic Center of Southern California. And I've reached out to my friends, my wonderful friends in the Muslim community. As I said, when the Hindu temple was desecrated, this has no place in our society. And there were additionally 3 in Austin, 3 houses of worship in Austin that were targeted as well. We stand with all people of faith in this state, and I want to thank you for the opportunity to offer those thoughts with regard to these egregious acts. And now it is my great pleasure to turn the mic over to our vice chair and dear friend and indefatigable advocate for justice, Vice Chair Damsky.
Thank you, Chair Levin. 1 week ago today, Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lashinsky were murdered outside a Jewish event at a Jewish venue in Washington, D.C., as our chair just mentioned. This has been international news. They were a promising young Jewish couple with connections to Israel, ardently working to create peace in that war-torn region. As a member of the Jewish community myself, I can report that this is very painful and alarming to my community. Their murderer uttered comments which have been frequently heard during anti-Israel protests since the Hamas invasion of Israel on October 7, 2023. These comments are considered insightful by mainstream Jewish organizations and have led to violence on college campuses, in Jewish communities, and targeting Jewish-owned businesses. We are also seeing a chilling of free speech by our current presidential administration, with deportations of college and university students and severe cuts in federal university funding, even complete withdrawal of all federal funds in at least one case. What I'd like our commission to explore is the small space between speech which can be considered insightful hate speech, which can inspire violence, and the necessity of protecting our First Amendment rights of free speech. Last year, Assemblymember Chris Ward passed Assembly Bill 3024, the Stop Hate Littering Act, which provides remedies to individuals and communities that are targeted with hate speech leaflets and flyers because those flyers incite hate and fear. Perhaps examining this bill can help us open the door to exploring other ways we can reduce hate crimes against protected communities by addressing speech which is insightful, while still protecting our constitutional right of free speech. In the memory of Sarah Milgram and Yaron Lashinsky, let us work for the day when no other people are murdered as a result of speech and social media posts which incite hate. May the memories of these inspiring young people forever be in blessing, and inspire more people to walk in their footsteps to to create peace. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And I was just informed, I missed the minutes. We'll do that in the next section. One other just quick reference point. The United States Supreme Court in the 1969 case of Brandenburg versus Ohio held that in order for speech to be incitement, it must be directed towards imminent lawlessness. And that is the current Supreme Court, and likely to result in it. And that is the current Supreme Court standard with respect to that. What I'd like to do as a little ledger domain, we're going to go to our subcommittee reports, and then we will approve the minutes. So if I may, the first subcommittee report that we are going to hear is going to be from Patterns, Trends, and Prevention with our dear friend, Commissioner Che.
Thank you, Chair Levin. Yes, I'm happy to report on behalf of our committee, update everyone on 3 ongoing research projects that we have reported in the past, but would like to just, for public record, remind everyone that we are making steady progress on 3 research projects. And they are the following: the research projects at UCLA Initiative to Study Hate, which includes a project to track media reports of hate, a project to synthesize research and information on offenders of hate crimes and hate incidents, particularly their motivations, a project to synthesize research and information about deprogramming and rehabilitation programs for hate crime offenders, including their efficacy. So I misstated, it's 3 under the UCLA Initiative to Study Hate. And then we do have another research project with Yotam Shemtov at UCLA as well, a review of past criminal history and future recidivism of hate crime offenders, and how different punitive measures affect their likelihood to reoffend. And then finally, a research project with Joe Walther at UC Santa Barbara. And this project includes 2 literature reviews, research on the current state of academic research on online hate, including emerging trends, and the second being messaging strategies in response to online hate that discourage and reduce subsequent hate posting. And this project also includes an original field experiment testing hate intervention messages intended to reduce hate online. And that concludes the report. Thank you.
Thank you. And if I could also just not only thank you for your service here, but for your marvelous fora recently regarding immigrants. Not just the one here, the one that Stop AAPI Hate did. So I want to just take this opportunity to extend my gratitude for you doing such incredible work. Thank you. Next, we will move on to our next committee report, our subcommittee report rather, which is the Subcommittee on Resources, Support, and Response. Do we have a report from that subcommittee?
Commissioner Salcedo.
Yes, thank you so much. Yes, well, let me first say that I appreciate all the work that all of the committees are doing. In this subcommittee, obviously, we have met multiple times, and we have been discussing a number of projects that we are considering to execute at some point soon that are in development at the moment. And so one of the things that we are doing is we are not just discussing, but also conducting research on the effectiveness of bystander intervention and training programs, just for us to really think and understand how all of this takes place and how we can influence all of this. I also want to point out that our amazing support and great friend who was part of the Civil Rights Department, Rebecca Goodshell, is part of the group working with Post to assist in developing a new training program for law enforcement on hate crimes. And this group is going to be filming segments for this training program next week, and also will continue in August. Another thing that we are also working on is that we have a project focused on hate crime coordinators for law enforcement agencies, just for us to really think about how they do their work and how they collect the data and how we can influence some of that, and for us to really understand across the state, you know, how all of these things work. Again, this committee under the leadership of Vice Chair Zdemski, we're working very diligently to make sure that we do the best that we can as it relates to all of these topics. That is my report for now. But if you have any suggestions related to any of this, please let us know. We'll be happy to consider and see how we can expand our work as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner Salcedo. And if I could just take a brief second to thank Dr. Goodsell, who I have the pleasure of going to these post workshops with. And I wish you all could see how proud she makes both our commission and the Civil Rights Department. So I just wanted to put a little shout out to our wonderful Dr. Goodsell. Next, speaking of wonderful, we're going to go to Commissioner Cuellar, who's going to give her subcommittee report on community forums. And if I could just thank her and Commissioner Filer for just incredible community fora, the last of which we just had just last week. Commissioner Cuellar, thank you.
Hi, good morning, and thank you, Chair Levin. It's nice to see all of you guys here today. So I will be giving the update on our community forum subcommittee. So as Chair Levin said, we just had our first community forum meeting last Thursday on the 22nd. It took place from 3 to 6, and the topic of the discussion was community-based organizations, responses to anti-immigrant hate. We highlighted 3 really great CBOs. The first one was the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights, also known as CHIRLA. We had Emily Romero there. We also had Chinese for Affirmative Action, Annie Lee, join us. She was sick, but she was a trooper. She made it through the presentation and she did a great job, so thank her. And then we had Fresno Immigrant and Refugee Ministries, also known as FIRM. We had Christine Barker Dominguez there. Again, it was a great turnout. I think we had about 55 participants. That was great. It was a great community forum, and thank you to all the commissioners that were able to join, and all the commissioners that were not able to join. We missed you. We definitely missed you guys. So we are actively working on our second community forum. We're still working out a lot of the dates and things like that. So we will get back to you guys as soon as we can with more of a schedule. But like I said, I think in the last update I gave, some of the forums that we are looking at for the next year, this year, is dialogues across differences, online hate, hate in schools and the disability, and rural communities. So those are just some of the topics that we'll be bringing this next year. if any of the commissioners have any ideas or anything like that, please let us know. We're happy to, and we're open to any concerns or any ideas you have for another forum. And if that's my update for today, if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to take those. And I think I see Commissioner Roybal.
Commissioner Roybal, please.
Thank you, Chair Levin, and thank you, Commissioner Quare. I got in trouble last week from Alec from Dr. Watts. So when I said that it was my favorite community forum ever. So I will say I love all of our community forums, but I just want to thank again Commissioner Quare, Commissioner Filer, and the staff for putting together the forum. Commissioner Che, your staffer was amazing. So please pass along our compliments. It was just, given everything that is happening around us in the US right now around immigration, it was so timely and it was great. So I have been talking about it every day since the forum to like folks anybody that will listen. So I just want to again say I hope we continue to do things like that. And again, my thanks to the staff, because I know they did a lot of the heavy lifting around it, and to Commissioner Filer and to you, Commissioner Quare, for your leadership. It was just great. Like, it is a reminder of, I think, why many of us choose to live in a place like California, because we believe it is a place for everyone. And the information was just great. And I know the recording is not up yet. I just looked on the site, but when it does go up, I highly, highly encourage those of you that were not able to attend to watch it. It was great. So thanks again.
Thank you, and I share your opinion. I was thinking it's more like, what's my favorite Beatles song? But anyway, if we could go to Commissioner Che for some comment, please.
Yes, I originally I wasn't going to comment because I didn't want to just go ahead and echo the remarks about Annie, our staff member, but I will confirm that she was deathly ill, but she really wanted to present because at a time where it is a very hostile environment for immigrants, it was really important in this public government sponsored platform and fora that we elevate the experiences of immigrants during this time. It directly affects our ability to advance our mission as a commission. If people are fearful to seek support, if individuals are reluctant to seek supportive services, to get information, to be more civically involved on matters that directly impact them. So I do want to add congratulations to our commissioners who continue to create a space for community members, especially those who work with directly impacted to have a voice. And I think that this is one of the most important aspects of what we do as a commission. So thank you very much.
Chair Levin, can I say one more thing
Anytime.
Thank you.
We love you.
I mean, I have been, personally, seeing people disappeared off the street, seeing like that our own government is doing, like, sometimes you feel powerless to do anything about it. And I just felt like that forum was an answer to some of that. And those organizations that despite being defunded are continuing to find ways to do this work and to make sure people have access to resources was amazing. So yeah, it was great. It was like a bright spot in what has been, unfortunately, very dark news around immigration in the US and even here in California, right? Like there have been, I was reading something in the Times this morning about people being detained at courthouses, and yeah, it was a really bright spot in an otherwise bad news. Unfortunately, that happens every day. So thanks again.
Thank you. And let me just, it's so important for us to stand together. And interestingly enough, before Annie became an attorney, she was a high school teacher in the Bronx. And it saddened me to see that a high school student who voluntarily went to a court hearing was arrested in the Bronx outside of that hearing. And what I just, I wasn't going to do this, but I think it's so important that folks realize that they're not alone. I don't know if they can see this photograph here. This is from the Los Angeles Times yesterday. Look at that headline. How heartless. 4-year-old Bakersfield girl facing deportation could die within days of losing her medical care. She had legally come into this country because of a significant gastrointestinal congenital issue. And under the former administration was allowed to come in. And now these heartless policies. Look at this child. This is a 4-year-old. This is not what our country aspires to. I just wanted to, because I have such great affection for my brothers and sisters in the immigrant community, and I was so impacted by not only former Chair Roybal's statements, but also by that fora. This is not America. This is not what we signed up for with respect to what our civics demand with us. But I'm going to pipe that down and save that for my civil liberties discussion. Do we have any other?
I'm sorry, one more thing, and then I promise.
No, wait. No. You are our joy. You are our joy. Please, the floor is yours.
Since Director Kish is here, Director Kish, there was lots of love for California versus Hate from those organizations, and the way that they have been able to be connected to that and to be able to get people the resources that they need. So I had asked a specific question about their their relationship with California versus Hate, and there was a lot of laudatory comments about the work with the department, in particular, the Civil Rights Department and California versus Hate. So I just wanted to let you know that since you're here with us today.
Thank you so much, former Chair Roybal. Thank you so much. Do we have any other commissioner discussion, Monica?
No further commissioner discussion.
Thank you. Do we have any public comment on Zoom?
No public comment on Zoom.
Kevin, do we have any emailed public comment?
No public comment on email.
And Shanna, do we have any public comment in the room?
No public comment.
Fantastic. And now if I'm going to exercise my leisure domain here, I'm going to go back for the approval of the minutes, which was Section 3 of our agenda today. So this is for approval of the minutes of May 2nd, 2025, our commission meeting. That's on attachment A, and we'll post a link in the chat to download attachment A from the commission's website. Do we have any commission discussion, Monica, on the minutes of our May 2nd meeting?
No commission discussion.
Do we have any public comment on Zoom, Monica?
No public comment on Zoom.
All right. Kevin, do we have any emailed public comment?
No email public comment.
Thank you. And Shanna, do we have any public comment in the room?
No comment.
Fantastic. Let's have commission discussion, if any, since there was no comment. So I think we can go to motions to approve, if there are any.
I move to approve the minutes.
Do we have a second?
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair Damsky. Alec, would you be kind enough to take the roll?
Yes, so the motion is to approve the May 2nd, 2025 commission meeting minutes. We'll start with Chair Levin,
Yes, aye.
Vice Chair Adamski,
Aye.
Commissioner Che,
Aye.
Commissioner Cuellar,
Aye.
Commissioner Filer, Commissioner Roybal,
Aye.
Commissioner Salcedo,
Aye.
Commissioner Suthers.
Aye.
It's 7 ayes. The minutes are approved.
Fantastic, thank you. Next, we'll get back on to the correct agenda here and discuss civil rights and civil liberties for a few minutes. David, would you be kind enough to post this just brief PowerPoint? Thank you. Some comments came out during the fora, and I wanted to make sure that some of the things that were referenced, that we just get to take a couple of minutes to present here. The 14th Amendment says, all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States and the state wherein they reside. That's just section 1 of the 14th Amendment. There are other sections as well. It also guaranteed equal protection of the laws. And in 1898, we had discussed briefly during just Annie's just fantastic presentation, one of many, by the way, because I've seen her various times before, where we talked about the Wong Kim Ark case. And in that case, the Supreme Court held that the child of non-citizens residing in the United States was automatically a citizen of the United States upon birth. That's 1898. So I think, what is that, 127 years? Next, Plyler versus Doe was a case that said states can't deny enrollment to undocumented children because it violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment, the part that I did not show you. And the court said, well, these folks aren't citizens. They are people in any ordinary sense of the term and are afforded these equal protections. Fast forward to now, and we'll go over during the next meeting, perhaps when we have the full Supreme Court docket for the year decided. But I wanted people to know where this current case comes from. And it's not really bandied around by its name. It's oftentimes called the present birthright citizenship case, but it's actually Trump versus Casa. And in that case, the Supreme Court is going to look at whether the district courts, there are 94 federal districts in the United States. We have many in California, but for our friends in LA, that's the Central District, for instance. San Diego is the Southern District. But in any event, the issue was whether that a single federal district could make a nationwide preliminary injunction with respect to the administration's January 20th, the first day of the administration, order ending birthright citizenship. And what the case relates to is, would that litigant be able only to protect themselves, or would that federal district court ruling run nationally, as generally these have? So I just wanted to make sure to give a little update on that. I've also been in discussion with various members of various communities relating to this horrible scourge of deportation, oftentimes without due process, including with false information. A U.S. citizen was recently detained and cuffed. So we are seeing these kinds of egregious violations just summarily. And the two places where the administration believes they get authority is by the 1798 Alien Act, which requires an invasion or incursion by a foreign government, a foreign power. Criminal gangs do not constitute that, either by their structure or by what they're doing. It's not a military invasion. Additionally, the 1952 Immigration Act, often referred to as the McCarran Act, gives an administration very wide authority with respect to removing people who counter American foreign policy. That being said, trying to deport people who write peaceful op-eds is an egregious violation of not only due process, but the First Amendment as well. So I wanted to make sure that I brought this up because many times you will see on the news someone throwing out a justification, but on real examination, it's a smokescreen. So I wanted to thank you for this opportunity to just set the record straight with regard to various things, including these discussions relating to birthright citizenship. Do we have a commission discussion, Monica? Because there are so many people doing such wonderful work in this area. I want to make sure that at each meeting, commissioners have the ability to talk about this particular topic alone if they desire. So any comments or discussion from commissioners are greatly welcome.
No commission discussion.
Excellent. Do we have public comment, Monica, on Zoom?
No public comment.
Kevin, do we have any emailed public comment?
No public comment on email.
Shanna, do we have any public comment in the room?
No comment.
All right, thank you. Just before I move on, I want to make one other point. Not too long ago, the Supreme Court refused to take a challenge relating to local efforts that would involve local governments not participating in federal actions related to deportation. And the Supreme Court turned down hearing that, meaning that there is no obligation for local authorities to cooperate with federal authorities with respect to deportations such as this. Anyway, I would like to then move on, if there are no comments from the public or our commissioners, to commission member announcements. So commission discussion. Monica, do we have any commissioners who have their hands raised?
No commissioners have their hand raised.
All right. Do we have any public comment on Zoom relating to commissioner discussion?
No public comment on Zoom.
Kevin, do we have any emailed public comments?
No email public comment.
Thank you. Shanna, do we have any public comment in the room?
No comment.
Excellent. We'll now go to agenda item 8, future agenda items. So I will now defer to my fellow commissioners. Monica, do we have any commissioners that have their hand raised?
No commissioners hand raised.
Do we have any public comment on Zoom? Monica?
No public comment on Zoom.
Kevin, do we have any email public comment?
No public comment on email.
Shanna, do we have any public comment in the room?
No comment.
Thank you. If there's no comment, I'd like to move on to the next agenda item. Public comment on items not on the agenda. The commission may not discuss or act on any matter raised during the public comment section that is not included in this agenda, except whether to decide to place the matter on the agenda for a future meeting. So, Monica, do we have any public comment on Zoom?
No public comment on Zoom.
Kevin, do we have any emailed public comment?
No email public comment.
Shanna, do we have any public comment in the room?
No comments.
All right. Just before adjournment, if we do have Director Kish, I just wanted to just thank him and just the wonderful staff of the Civil Rights Department, and especially want to congratulate them on their excellent presence at yesterday's UCLA Fora. All of you make us so proud. So with that happy note, what I'd like to do is have an adjournment of the meeting. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved, Chair.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I second.
Fantastic. Can we now vote on that, Alec? May we take a vote on this, please?
Great. We could also do it by consensus. I'm happy to call the roll, though, if that's what you prefer.
We can do that by consensus if you prefer. It'd be my pleasure.
Okay, yeah. I guess any objections to adjourning? Fantastic.
Thank you. On that note, I want to thank our marvelous commissioners, our staff, and the wonderful presenter, Dr. Langdon. And this meeting of, the fourth meeting of our California Commission on the State of Hate is hereby adjourned at 10:22 a.m. today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye,
Thank you,
everyone.
everyone.
Happy